Yeah, thank you very much. It's a honor to be part of this reading and to be associated with the Red Wheelbarrow Press through this event. Thank you very much for all that you do. Yeah, so today I will be reading from my poetry collection, Obed at Night or Serenade in the Morning. It's a collection of a number of poems, and it talks about the impact of insecurity and unrest, as well as corruption, a system that found itself tangled in the web of corruption, and what the citizens experience. So, in short, the collection is me speaking the voice of many Nigerians and at large Africans. Uh, so apart from the national impact, I also write from the aspects of personal impact, um, from experiences, from poetry of witness, as well as some confession. So that is what the collection is all about, and I dedicated it to those who fell while fighting for this country or for survival, and to life for being a bittersweet teacher. Yeah, so I'll be starting with the first poem in the collection titled Counting Down 10. Here at the riverbank, I watch as the egret picks another fish. It too has come in search of earthworms to pick. This is how hope hands me over to my fear. Can we not pick rose flowers without being turned? Every step we take re-echoes the sound of harmattan leaves, as if to say a temple bell calls for emergency. Memories. This morning I rehearsed the way a body shrieks when tightened in between logs held by chain of slavery. Slavery is no more, but the chains were melted into the bangles and wristwatches we wear today. Honey and milk abandoned at the swelling of black gold. And like the torn walls of the greenhouse, hunger spills over our land like a tired rain. A man carrying a fatigued hope confined the body of his brother, ransomed. The abductor and the abducted smile to their bankers. This is how flowers sprout daily on our headlines in red blossoms, red dews, red eyes open to behold their gone souls, and red hearts in fantasy of seeing bodies that collected bullets into dust and ashes. I stare into the sky for a true Messiah to descend, for our countrymen have showed us in acts and omission that not everybody on the cross are messiahs. That's the poem Counting Down in Fortitude. Now, I will also read another poem. I witnessed how this land caught its own wrist. Last night's gusty wind chased a giant rat into the grave. Its prints are everywhere in the muddy soil, but the holes are blocked with the victims of the pelting rain. The trees are now humble, bowing to every passers-by. They say the tempest was a pathetic fallacy, expressing the pain of a land dissolving into itself, beaten by the monkeys feeding from its crops, even when unripe for harvest. When Musa fled Pharaoh to the Red Sea, he parted the sea and walked away. This land also parted its own sea but got stuck in between, in a Bermuda Triangle, breathing but bleeding so much that the sea had turned red. A judge hit his gavel against a culprit. It sounded like a jackal giving the hyena a slap on the wrist. And in days, friends and family beat drums on the streets to welcome their sons, as if returning from a battlefield. But when foreign justice hits, you see them going 50,000 feet below ground level. That is, I witnessed how this land caught its own risk. And that particular poem talked about how our justice system works. Uh, yeah, sometimes when a corrupt politician is taken to the courts, in the end you realize him going scot free. But when foreign courts found them in the act, we realize that in the end, the justice is eventually done the way it should be. So that's what inspired that particular poem. Now I will read another poem titled Dirge for Mother, or for the day she replaced her kimono. 1999, my country decided to try a new style. That line is from Adedayo Agarawu's poem titled Timeline. Then another line from Adedayo Agarawu's poem titled Homicide. My country is in a green ward autopsy room. Who killed her? How? Why? Now my poem begins. At the coming of election, I hold my heart like national pledge. This is how we insert hope inside pillowcases and follow its music into the dreamland. How we lip sync the hymn of the promised land. Yet all we have done for decades is sheer dreaming. How we kill, waiting to unleash the fire in our tongues. We make this fire to make our food. It turns our food to live coals, our kitchens to arches, our future into infinity. Democracy is not the thorn that tore the garments of our country's butterfly. This land is peopled by leaders whose hands swim in oil. Any egret that enters exits as a partridge. Is peopled by fanciers of stones. A palm oil monger meets them and gets his pot broken into shrapnel, becomes bathed in it. And they say if you trade the wares of sand, you will be paid the money of stones. Democracy is water, is music, is obeyed, is hope calling our part of the world a container, and the stars a series of holes drilled on its body for breathing in and out, is a kimono adorned with fruitful elegance, in loyal foppishness, to bodies reeking of royalty, nobility or no oneness, inherited from mother's pilage pills. This body is a country, and my tribal mark is not the only evidence of my Nigerianness. The way fire eats us up from the inside, the way we become decaying sacrifices, pulling down scavengers, and the scars left on our on mother's body after being dragged through 6 decades of puddle. Our body still carries the mud of independence, malady, wealth, and take, but our heartbeats are melodies of pre-independence. Now another poem, breaking news no longer break us. Breaking news no longer break us. I reread the headline as if to say it's a fiction, not because it's impossible, but because breaking news no longer break us, because we've been broken again and again and again until there's nothing more to break. Because the news came when we were singing silence to dull the pain of our yesterday griefs, waiting for the moon to spill its light on our bodies, for the shadows to pour into the earth's bowel. How we wish we could rearrange our fate under the lime tree and retrace our steps into a better land, or replant the root of this land on another continent. Maybe a rain of sanity will fall on it and wash away the tumults on its surface, and irate its orifice with a song of hope, and sprout the body of our gone men who slipped into the bowel of Baga, Chibuk, Jos. Then another poem, Fireplace. This poem talks about our correctional system. We no longer call the prison again. In Nigeria, we call it correctional center. But when I wrote this poem, it was still called prison. And yet, the inspiration behind this was that the correctional center actually does not correct those. Unfortunately, at times, those who goes to prison were not those who are supposed to be in prison, and those at times, sometimes when people are got imprisoned, instead of getting corrected, they come out more tough than how they were. So, and that's what inspired this poem, and I titled it Fireplace. A train snakes into a tunnel. I watch as its tail vanishes into the hazy embrace. This is how man withers when his freedom is dragged from his grip. Once I walked into a maximum prison to see if I'll find bodies melting to the heat of the goal, and awaiting trial seat, breathing in comfort and breathing out contentment, like a snail settling in its shell. And my eyes query the sanctity of our prisons. They no longer correct. Even as they carry red eyes like a scorching sun, they only add to the heat, melting down the society. Even though they build walls against the bodies of inmates, they are no longer an end to vices, but the end of the beginning, a retreat for the Robin Hoods, a workshop for upcoming threats. Only but a few unleash the sea of their eyes, only the prison wall as if to bring it down, because it was the police who brought them there when their palms opened to nothing. It was the police who tied stones around the complaints of the complainants, so it may sink them into the bottom of the prison. A boy stretched his hand as if to touch my heart. He said, I didn't write the confession. I was touched, and everything inside me was activated against me. Yeah, so that is the poem. And then I will read this. The word our tears ask for. Nigerians often, young Nigerians are often profiled by the police. When you look good, when you dress well, when you, automatically you are seen as a fraudster. They don't believe that young Nigerians should be rich. So automatically, when you are wealthy and you are young, they believe that you are a fraudster. And when you dress in some manners, they believe that you are a thug or a hooligans. Or so this poem calls for the freedom to dress freely, to to express ourselves whichever way we like. So that's why I titled it The Word Our Tears Ask For. I remember how my neighbor's face was pressed against the hot stone of oppression, how his mouth became filled with sand of depression in the hand of those employed to protect and secure us. He shouted, I think we are a part of this world, but his voice faded away like the tweets of a fleeting bird. Another police lifted him and put his hand around his shoulder, but a golden nose does no good. It is as pale as black one, like a prison uniform sewn in satin and lace. For the friendly police was only smiling at his pocket. Let's read the following from right to left. Maybe someday we'll get it right and become an icon of a pristine world. A world where we are able to walk and chew gum. A world where we sit at our corridor and sip peaceful coffee, or celebrate with whiskey without carrying network of fears in our minds, and a world where coloring our hair and dressed in a black turtleneck doesn't make us criminals. Yeah. Okay, that's about, because the poem, actually the collection is divided into two parts. So I would move to the second part. This first part talks about national uh, poem, political poem, and all that. But the second part, personal poem, where I talk from the experience of people, uh, grieve, and all that. So I will start with demystification of grief, or the augury of God is good all the time. I put a butterfly on my tongue, a music serenading the night into stars, turning darkness into a harvest of melody. I unfeathered a bird, and a poem fell off the sky. This is how a poet leaves his chrysalis and perch on a chrysanthemum. This is how he brews himself in advance for war, for peace, for whatever will be in the next ticks of time. A boy asked for loan, granted, looked at God from heart rippling of gratitude. His God wanted his desire come true. A boy asked for loan, denied, looked at God with eyes that pulled down bridges. His God didn't want him in the sea of debt. How else do one stand ashore waiting for the voice of God? It's the voice of man, not the voice of God. Yeah, so that's the poem. Then, okay, yes, I wrote this for my mother, and I think everyone will relate. It's a poem not for my mother, but for every mother. So I titled it "How Mother Etches My Name on God's Palm." Every night his face contests whiteness with the pages of his books. As a calf, he had mastered the craft of survival. Him alone is a 10 cavalry, an alpha, 400 horses and 600 foot, the last born, second of the twins. His tongue the shape of my dreams. I want to open my eyes and see his dreams perch one by one on the tree of reality. And when I close my eyes, I will know I've left for the world a fire, a moon, a fighter, a winner. He hardly falls, and whenever he falls, I feed life to him spoon by spoon. I call God to mount a garrison around him, that to where his head will become a butterfly, the land a field of blossoms, his tongue's a rainbow, may his legs take the shape of Marco Polo and carry him. So that's it. Yes, the poem I wrote it in the voice of mother talking about me. That's why it's titled How Mother Etches My Name on God's Palm. Now a direct poem. This poem I use ellipsis as the title, three dots, ellipsis. And this is for father, for my dad. I touched myself where a tree was a node. How when dad arrived, we used to fly into the street like pigeons, like butterflies, like bees heading towards a field of nectars. A boy's father arrived and it became a rat, became a cockroach, became a gecko fleeing to its hide. The boy once told me he doesn't have a dad, only a father, and his father said he doesn't know how to spell his name. So he decided to fill his heart with firestones. But I read Rumi where he said, "It is rain that grows flowers, not thunder." He did not know Father spells our name to us the way we sing Jumbo's name to him. Father did not call us falling stars, but meteor showers, a spark of wishes. His tongue is wet with praise, like when my siblings said my head was a burden to my body. Mother said this head is a reservoir of wisdom. Then another poem, I think this poem, Voices and Eyes as Flagellation. It's a poem for those experiencing, uh, let me call it domestic violence under their parents, tough parents, and that way, because the children cannot talk, they get depressed. So I titled it Voice and Eyes as Flagellation. Before Grandpa died, he used to say when a parrot goes silent, check his truth. Fear must have built its nest therein. Its word must have been in danger. But your silence is divined as a way a child begins the act of stubbornness. So your mother says the husband of a stubborn child is Cain. The act of stubbornness, but she forgets to add eyes that carry tongues and voice that strike like thunder. Every morning, Father's voice breaks into your body and stores dozens of thunderstorms in your rib cage. And at night, mother's eyes cut into your heart, so deep that your brain leaks through it. Your mind a pothole storing the roadkill of the past. Your present a bridge leading to nowhere until you were reduced to talking to the only person who understands your grief, that is yourself, before whom you can only talk confidently. Last night, you were counting and dictating the scars the insurgencies left on your body to your confidant. A voice of a comedian sounded from the television. The joke dulled the pain so much that you laughed, so hard that the room shifted its gaze to you, and you realized you were the only one who heard the joke, and the TV has been off. That's the poem. Let me read two more poems to end it. The This poem I titled it poem. I titled it poem. Yeah, so this is how I titled untitled poems. Or how do we begin the sermon of a boy tracing out sanity on the body of a deflating windscreen? Another time he is found listening to the music of dancing leaves. Maybe wellness is locked in the breeze that rushes through his body. Maybe he should chase wind into the body of earth or sea. Maybe July will remind him that dead plants will still rise as August visitors. Yes, the earth is a boar. It has swallowed things and still counting, but there are places where it sprouts what is swallowed by way of blossoms. But the boy seeking peace in death is a seed watered by depression, and when Iroko grows, it becomes an egoistic god, massaged with perpetual appeasement. And the body of a boy carrying deep sighs is a labyrinth of hot coals. It burns things, even the title of a poem. Yeah. So that's that. I will so okay. Before I read the last one, permit me to read this. I titled it Bed by Bed, Unfeathering My Grief. Bed by bed, unfeathering my grief. I first knocked the dove in me on the head, where a boy is a loyal camel, carrying gold as his haunch, tracing love's footstep foot by foot. Today, I prefer this bed dead. At the sight of a love eel, sometimes I crawl into the shell of a snail. Sometimes I wear the body of a cheetah. Sometimes I am a peregrine falcon flying past its target. Sometimes I slip into the shell of a tortoise. But all the times I am offered to a sudden fire to eat me from soul to soul. And when the pain of ruin and heartbreak meet in one's heart, it sparks into a forest fire, erasing the present and eating into the future. My lover gave me a towel to mop my sweating palms. I didn't know she was giving me something I would later use to choke my leaking eyes. My tears drop in a honey and it becomes a bile. It drops in the milk and it claws into hopelessness. This morning, I threw the towel into the Australian fire and it went off. Now, the final someday I will be no more. This house will become a memory of me, a museum of my existence, holding the regalia I've worn on its walls, hanging my frames and poems, holding onto my rosaries, as if to leave them is to shift the house foundation. Someday my heart will stop beating, but my wristwatch will keep ticking, and I will be ushered out of this house and lowered into dust. Sometime at night, people will enter the house and ask if there's anybody left outside. Someone will say no, and they will shut the door, leaving me outside in the grave. Someday, people will call for a prayer mat to pray, and they will be giving my mat They will remember me and recite a class upon my soul. Some will sit at my corner to mimic how I smile while drawing close the beads of my rosary, and while meditating or rubbing my cats on their heads, or writing my poems, or thinking of the day I will be no more. Someday I will be no more, and the only thing that will remain of me is the memory of me. Thank you for listening.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Taufik. Let's have a round of applause for all those who can unmute themselves.
Thank you.
Thank you. We had a couple of people joining us while you were reading, which was really great. Um, so,
If you are currently in the Middle East and your travel has been interrupted, we strongly recommend.
okay. Um, Taufik, you said you were okay about having a little question and answer session. Hoping that that's still fine with you. Um, so if anybody would like to ask a question or make a comment, please raise your hand or jump in if you would like to. Okay, Ed is up first. Thank you, Ed.
Yeah. Taufik, thank you so much for your reading. I loved it, and I think what I found myself wondering is when you transition from the political poems to the personal poems. Um, Not that that's a hard and fast line, but I just wondered how that that feels for you, approaching writing in these two different modes, almost, and negotiating that. I loved both because they allowed a way into your world and your way of seeing the world. So I love the imagery in the personal poems and the playfulness and the perspective in the political poems. So I'll leave it there if you have anything.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the feedback.
Okay. And then poetry as survival. I don't know if you want to say anything more about that, because that's an idea that just kept going through my head. Survival is, yeah.
Did you mean poetry of survivor?
Yes, or just writing in survival. Just if you had any thoughts about that or your own poetry in relation to that. Um,
Okay. Yeah, I think that's what poetry is all about. You know, most times, this poem are our way of escape from the grief, from the experiences. Um, Sometimes we have no one to share all this pain with other than to approach our poems. And at times we just write it and the world claps, whereas unknowing that while we were writing it, there were pains in our hearts. Sometimes we were crying, sometimes we were shedding tears. Yes, but the fact that we are able to reduce these emotions, these feelings into words is a way of survival for us as well. The fact that we believe that people outside there can read this poem and find it relatable and know what we are going through, and the fact that we can as well write about the pain of others for the world to see. uh, it's also one of survival as well, even at times if the survival is not about us but for people out there. uh, Personally, I've not physically experienced the insurgency uh, of of Boko Haram. It's basically people in the north, but I have to write about it because it could be any of us, and we don't have to experience it directly before we write about it. I've written about the Palestine. I've written about Gaza. I've written about the Uyghur in China and all of this. And I've written about George Floyd. I wrote a poem about Ahmed Alberry, who was shot dead sometime in the USA. That poem won me the second prize in the uh, uh, in a contest. Yeah, that I can't immediately remember now. But the joy in that is that the world outside where I wrote this poem from could relate with it and could feel the pain of those who have this experience physically. So I think that's what the poetry of survival is all about. You should just share it with the world, let them see what's going on. And yes, poetry itself is not just about the entertainment, it's about history. People coming after we have left will know what we have experienced during our time. At times, history repeats itself. And when people pick books, they realize that, oh, what is happening now has actually happened in the past. And they will find, sometimes they find solution. How do these people cope in this era? It's just like the writing poems about the COVID-19. So God forbid something like that happens in the future. So if the world come across collection of poems of how people experience and how they cope during the COVID-19, it could pass as a way out for them. And that's what writing is all about generally. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Uh, Kamo, I see your hand. You can go ahead.
Hi, Taufik. That was a beautiful reading. Really enjoyed the poetry. I think what really stood out for me in the poetry was that feeling of confinement, and a feeling of overwhelm because of that confinement. And I think one of the metaphors, or one of the examples that you always made, not always, but like a couple of times I've heard it, was the feeling like a snail going into its shell. So that was a very beautiful description of that. So my question is, like, I hear the political side of this connection, and also drawing into your personal experiences as well, and having personal poems. Um, and it was said earlier that you've written a chapbook, and now you've written a collection of poetry. How does your this collection differ from your chapbook? Is it similar in terms of themes, or is this something different for you?
Okay. Well, thank you very much for the feedback and thanks for pointing out the imagery. Yes, I play almost always with mundane imageries, images that people do not often think could work into a poem. So I make sure I use all of this so that whoever reads can find them relatable. So thank you so much. Regarding my chapbook and my uh, full length collection, my chapbook is titled, the one mentioned is Tongueless Secrets. The theme is actually totally different from the themes in my full length collection. Like I said, this one is almost, the full length collection is actually about political poem, grief, generally what we experience national, the impact of insecurity and corruption in the land, and what we experience as Nigerians, and we experience individually in our various homes and in our life as well. So that's what the full length collection is all about. But the chapbook Tongueless Secrets, like the name implies, it's a result of deep thoughts, reflections, meditation. So it's like you sitting with a sage and then listening from them. So a tongueless secret, a collection of meditation about life, about faith, about belief, a lot of that. That's what my poem is all about. When you read it, some people have read it, have likened it to the work of Rumi, and we know who Rumi is, and so that's what my chapbook Tongueless Secret is all about. So it's not so personal, and sometimes you can find some personality because myself, I'm a Muslim, and I drift towards mystic aspect of the religion, Sufi. Yeah, so I write from this personal experience as well. So that's what, yeah, that's the difference between these two works for me. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Amazing.
Sorry, I have a question.
You can go ahead.
Yeah. So, hi, good evening, Mr. Taufik.
Yeah,
So,
thank you.
I was listening to your poem the other time, and I noticed something about the poem. There is something always recurrent about in the poems. There is a way you try to bring in the dead into the dead being a witness, because there was a place you point out in the poem. You said they will ask them some they will ask if someone is still outside, but the door would be locked and you'll be left outside. There is a way you bring in even the absence into the present. I don't know if you understand my line of thoughts there. So how do you make it coherent in your poetry that even those that are outside the realms of reality, they are still brought in into reality itself?
Yeah, thank you very much. That's a very thoughtful one. Yeah, well, I believe that not really in superstition, and not really having belief in reconnaissance. I can't really recall if that's how it is pronounced. Yeah, but I believe that we are incomplete without those who have left us. Yeah, it's like telling our stories without remembering our gone souls. I can't be complete without mentioning my father, who is now late. I don't think my history will be complete. So the fact that we keep, thinking about them, the fact that we keep remembering their impact in our life, then in whatever we do, we can always bring them in, and that's how these thoughts definitely um, come in. And then, coherence is all about, when you write a poem, at times you write a poem and you do not need to go back to it for review, for edit. It comes perfect. But at times when you write, you have to go back again, look at how does it work well, does it flow and all that. So the issue of coherence is about the muse, how the poem comes. So we are just a reflection of what comes to our mind whenever we are writing the work. So I think it just comes naturally that way. And I believe that, yeah, everyone, when we just pay attention to everything around us and everything that comes to our mind, we should be able to bring them into our work as well. Yeah.
That's such a
Thank
great
you very
answer.
much.
Um, Taufik, I hope you won't mind if I jump in here. If anybody else, they can stick their hands up and I'll get you. I guess I just really wanted to ask you what drew you to haiku, because I noticed that two of the prizes that you won were for haiku, and uh, I thought it was just an interesting kind of poetry to be focused on, and maybe you can talk a bit about that.
Okay. Well, I think what drew me to haiku was trying to, when I started poetry, I just tried to understand um, different forms of poetry, different forms of the art, and I stumbled on haiku. I fell in love with it because of its focus on nature, um, everything around us, the nature. And from deep study, I realized that haiku is not just about nature itself. It's not just about three lines. It's just not about 575. It goes deeper than that. And I realized that even the rules of haiku has helped me in the mainstream poetry. So when I came across haiku, I fell in love with its minimalist nature, the brevity that you do not have to you can tell a whole story in just few lines. And the fleeting moment that you share in haiku, the ability to say things the way it is, without grandiloquence, without flamboyance in your language, these are things that drew me to haiku. And I think when I discover it, it shapes my poem as well, my mainstream poetry as well. And that's since, I can say, since 2019 when I found it. It has really helped my poetry generally. And yes, I have a chapbook of haiku. Yes, I have across the full moon is the title. And I also have another chapbook, Dust and Rust. That's a collection of haibun. Haibun is a form of Japanese poetry where you bring the haiku together with a prose poetry or with a prose. It was initiated by one of the masters of haiku, Matsubacho. So I have another um collection, a chapbook titled Dust and Rose. Is a collection of haibun. And I can say that I think that's the first book of haibun written by an Africa. Yeah, so that's the craft of haiku, the aesthetics of haiku are what drew me to the arts. Thank you.
Yeah, that's really amazing. Um, to have, I mean, I was saying you had two books of poetry, but in fact they're four. It's amazing. I mean, so I noticed that two of them were published in 2021. Was that, sorry, I'm asking another question now, and I know other people might want to jump
Okay.
in, but
uh, the haiku collection was published in 2020, while the haibun collection was published in 2022. Yeah, by
okay.
Button Oak Press in California. The previous one, the haiku, was published by Mamba Press in Ghana. Yeah.
So you
And
published
the
like four collections of poetry in of like 2 or 3 years. It's an amazing kind of feat. And yet you are a lawyer and I'm sure have all kinds of family stuff and whatever. How do you manage all of that?
Well, it's I try to, it's what you like, you always find time for it. When I was in school, when I was I was studying, how tedious the law study is all about, I just try to include writing in my timetable. So I know that tonight I'm going to read criminal law and contracts. So tomorrow it will be equity and poetry. So I just find a way to plan them in my timetable, in my day-to-day activities. And then, at times poetry just comes to you and you have to put it down whenever it comes. And that's how I try to, you know, flow with it. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Criminal law and poetry. It's I'm not so sure it goes well, but it must have to go on well for you. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. At times we realize that other things have to suffer at times when you have to do a lot of things together. Yes, but then if it is something that you enjoy doing, then why not? It won't really matter. Yeah.
Fantastic. Does anyone have any more questions or comments for Taofeek? Okay. I think that was a really wonderful reading and amazing introduction for me to a completely new voice and one that I'll definitely be watching. Thank you very much, Taufeek, for joining us and for sharing your work with us.